The transmission had been broadcast across every known system, a declaration of war so absolute that it sent shockwaves through the entire galactic community. The Korthan Dominion, an empire spanning thousands of star systems, had just announced its intention to exterminate humanity. Admiral Rannoch of the Korthans had spoken with his usual arrogance. "You are an infestation, a mistake of evolution. Your kind will be erased from existence. The Dominion will make it as if you never existed." The message echoed through space, reaching human colonies, military outposts, and Earth itself. Billions of humans heard those words. Billions clenched their fists in response. For most species, such a declaration would have meant surrender. The Korthans had wiped out dozens of civilizations before, their war fleets unstoppable. They expected humanity to beg, to fall to their knees. Instead, they got a response. A single video was sent back to the Dominion's high command. The sender? A human soldier, battle-worn, standing in front of the ruined city of New Moscow on the colony world of Grissom 4. His armor was scorched. Blood, both human and alien, streaked his face. He had seen what the Korthans had done, and he smiled. "Congratulations," the soldier said, his voice calm, almost amused. "You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species." Then he cut the transmission. The war had begun. The Korthan Dominion had been undefeated for millennia. Their war fleets moved like a storm across the galaxy, consuming planets, enslaving species, and wiping out those who dared resist. But they had never fought humans before. On Grissom 4, the first true battle of the war was already underway. The Korthans had expected a quick and effortless slaughter. Instead, they found themselves caught in a bloodbath. Major Elias Carter wiped the sweat from his brow as he crouched behind a half-destroyed barricade. The streets were littered with Korthan bodies, their dark blue blood staining the ruins of New Moscow. The alien warriors had expected to march through the city unchallenged. Instead, they were being torn apart by human resistance fighters using guerrilla tactics, jury-rigged explosives, and sheer, unrelenting fury. "Status?" Carter barked into his comms. "Still holding, sir," came the reply from Lieutenant Vasquez. Her unit had been holding the western flank, preventing the Korthans from encircling them. "But we need more ammo. Those bastards just keep coming." Carter grimaced. They all knew the reality of the situation. Grissom 4 was doomed. The Korthans had sent a full invasion force. No help was coming. Earth's fleets were still mobilizing. Their orders were simple: make the Korthans bleed. "Hold as long as you can," he said, "and if you have to fall back, make sure to leave them a parting gift." Vasquez chuckled darkly. "Already setting the charges, Major." Carter turned his attention back to the battlefield. In the distance, Korthan war machines rumbled through the city, plasma cannons leveling entire buildings. But the humans didn't fight fair. They struck from the shadows, planted traps, lured the Korthans into ambushes. Every street they took, they paid for in blood. The Korthans thought humanity would be an easy conquest. They were learning otherwise. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. Other civilizations, long cowed by the Korthan Dominion, watched in disbelief as humans, mere upstarts on the galactic stage, fought back. And then, something happened that no one had expected. The Dominion's High Council received a report that chilled them to their very cores. The humans had taken a Korthan warship. Somehow, against all odds, a small human strike team had infiltrated a Dominion battleship, slaughtered its crew, and hijacked it. No species had ever done that before. For the first time in Korthan history, they felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The KDS Varak, a Dominion battleship designed for planetary sieges, had been one of the most powerful vessels in the Korthan fleet. It was meant to be unstoppable, a symbol of the Dominion's supremacy. Now it belonged to humanity. Inside the bridge of the captured warship, Captain Daniel Rourke stood over the command console, his hand still shaking from the sheer insanity of what they had just pulled off. He glanced around at his team, Marines, engineers, and hackers, most of them still covered in Corthan blood. "We actually did it," whispered Lieutenant Harper, her eyes wide. "Damn right we did," Rourke said. "Now let's make sure it was worth it." The Corthans had underestimated humanity's adaptability. They thought their ships were too complex, their systems too alien. But humans had spent centuries reverse engineering everything they got their hands on. The moment they had control of the ship, Harper and her tech team had ripped into its systems like scavengers on a fresh kill. Rourke turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Kasari. Earth needs to hear about this." The transmission was sent in seconds, bouncing through secured human military channels. It didn't take long for an answer. The face of Admiral Kasari, leader of Earth's defense fleet, appeared on the main screen. Her normally cold, calculating expression broke for just a second, an emotion between shock and exhilaration flashing across her features. "You're telling me," she said, voice controlled but sharp, "that you've hijacked a Corthan battleship?" Rourke smirked. "We didn't just hijack it, Admiral. We're about to use it." The Dominion was scrambling. No species had ever stolen one of their ships before. It was an insult, an impossibility. The Corthan High Council was in an uproar, their arrogant confidence shaken. But humanity wasn't done humiliating them. Instead of fleeing with their prize, Rourke and his team turned the Varak against its former masters. As a Corthan fleet approached Grissom 4 to reinforce their ground forces, the stolen battleship opened fire. The first ship to go down didn't even raise shields. It never expected one of its own to turn against it. A direct hit from the Varak's forward plasma cannon ripped it apart. The second ship managed to react, but too late. Harper had cracked into the Dominion's fleet security codes, disguising their communications. For precious minutes, the enemy hesitated, confused, unsure whether the Varak had been compromised or if this was some kind of trick. That hesitation cost them. The human fleet, now mobilized and coming in hot, dropped out of hyperspace. And then, for the first time in history, a Corthan fleet was ambushed. On the ground, Major Carter and his resistance fighters watched as fire rained from the sky. At first, they assumed the worst, more Corthan reinforcements. But then, Carter's calm crackled to life. "Major, this is Captain Rourke aboard the Varak. We're giving these bastards a taste of their own medicine." Carter stared at the sky, watching the once invincible Dominion forces panic. A slow grin spread across his bloodied face. "About damn time," he muttered. The impossible had happened. The Dominion had declared war on humanity. But now, for the first time, they realized their mistake. They hadn't declared war on just another species. They had declared war on the deadliest fighters in the galaxy, and humanity was just getting started. The battle over Grissom 4 had been a massacre, but not for humanity. The Corthan fleet, once seen as unstoppable, was in ruins. What remained of their warships was retreating, broken and humiliated. On the surface, the last of the Corthan ground forces were scrambling to evacuate, but Major Carter and his resistance fighters weren't about to let that happen. The humans had spent days suffering under the Corthan occupation, watching their cities burn, their people executed. Now it was payback time. Carter stepped over the smoldering corpse of a Corthan officer, his rifle still hot from the last burst of gunfire. His comm unit crackled. "Major," came Vasquez's voice, "the last of them are holed up near the spaceport trying to run." Carter spat on the ground. "Like hell they are." He turned to his fighters, most of them battered and exhausted but still standing, still fighting. "They think they can do this to us and just walk away," he growled, voice filled with pure fury. "They came to our world, killed our people. Now they run. Hell no, we finish this." A chorus of war cries erupted as the humans charged forward. Across the galaxy, word of Grissom 4 spread like wildfire. The Korthan Dominion, the once invincible empire, had just suffered something unthinkable. A defeat at the hands of an inferior species. For the first time in their history, they weren't the ones erasing civilizations. They were the ones being hunted. The stolen battleship Varak, now fully under human control, wasn't just a trophy. It was a weapon. Rourke and his crew were already making modifications, stripping out Korthan tech, and replacing it with human ingenuity. The first human-operated Dominion warship was about to become something far more dangerous. And then came the transmission that changed everything. Admiral Kasari stood before the United Earth Military Command, her face broadcasted across every colony, outpost, and ship. "This war is no longer about survival," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "The Korthan Dominion thought they could erase us. They thought we would break." She paused, letting the silence hang heavy. They were wrong. Her eyes burned with something primal. "We are not just fighting back. We are hunting them now." Cheers erupted across Earth and every human colony. This wasn't just about defense anymore. This was a declaration of vengeance. The humans weren't just surviving this war. They were about to win it. Deep in Dominion space, the Korthan High Council was in chaos. The room, normally filled with calm, calculating rulers, was now a battleground of arguments and fear. "This should not have happened." Admiral Rannoch slammed his fist against the table, his mandibles flaring. "Humans were supposed to be an easy conquest." "We underestimated them," one of the warlords growled. "Their ability to adapt, to retaliate, it is unlike anything we have ever seen." "And now," another counselor added, voice cold with realization, "they are coming for us." For the first time in their empire's history, the Korthans faced something they had never encountered. An enemy that refused to kneel. An enemy that learned from its losses. An enemy that, when pushed to the brink, didn't just survive, it evolved. And the war had only just begun. The first human counteroffensive in Dominion space began with fire and fury. Using the stolen Varak as their spearhead, Earth's forces launched a surgical strike deep into Korthan territory. The target, Vel Wrath, a heavily fortified supply world responsible for fueling the Dominion's war machine. A full-scale planetary invasion was suicide. The Korthans had orbital defenses, garrisoned forces, and an entire fleet stationed nearby. But humans had never fought fair. Instead of an invasion, they sent a message. Rourke and his team piloted the Varak straight into the system under false Dominion identification codes. The Korthans, still scrambling from their loss at Grissom 4, had no idea what was coming. And then, as the Korthan fleet finally realized who was piloting the ship, the humans activated the kill switch. Before the battle, Harper and her tech crew had rigged the Varak to do something no Dominion ship was ever designed to do: detonate its entire fuel core in a controlled chain reaction. Rourke's last transmission to the Korthan command was simple. "Congratulations," he said, voice filled with dark amusement. "You just lost another planet." The Varak was on a collision course. Impact. The explosion was cataclysmic. A stolen Dominion battleship, overloaded with enough plasma fuel to incinerate a fleet, detonated directly over Vel Wrath's main supply hubs. The shockwave crippled the Korthan war effort in that sector. Fuel depots were wiped out, entire supply chains shattered. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting conquest, but no one had ever dared fight them like this. And this was just the beginning. The Korthans weren't just losing ships and planets, they were losing something far worse: their reputation. Across the galaxy, species that had once cowered under Dominion rule began to watch closely. If humans could fight back, if they could bleed the unbleedable, then maybe they weren't alone. Insurgencies began to flare up on Corthan-controlled worlds. Slave species that had long accepted their fate started rebelling. Supply lines were sabotaged, Corthan patrols were ambushed, and military commanders found themselves hunted in their own territories. The Corthans had ruled by fear. Now, they were the ones afraid. The High Council convened again, their once proud chamber now filled with unease. "We cannot allow this to continue," Admiral Rannick growled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "The humans must be eradicated, all of them." "But how?" another counselor demanded. "They fight like nothing we've ever seen. They sacrifice ships to take down fleets. They destroy supply chains instead of claiming them. They don't fight for territory, they fight to kill us." The words hung heavy in the chamber. The Corthans had always believed themselves to be the galaxy's apex predators. But now? Now they had awakened something worse. Not prey, not an enemy. A species that, when pushed to the brink, became something monstrous. They had awakened humanity. Back on Earth, Admiral Kasari stood in the War Command Center, staring at the holographic battle map of the galaxy. The Dominion still held thousands of worlds. Their fleets still outnumbered humanity's forces 100 to 1. But now? The war wasn't about numbers. It was about strategy. It was about fear. Kasari turned to her officers. "We don't need to defeat the Dominion in open war," she said. "We just need to break them." A new plan was forming. A war not of territory, but of annihilation. Their supply chains, their command structure, their very belief in their own power. "We take it all." She looked at the officers around her, the deadliest strategists humanity had ever produced. "Let's show them what happens when you declare war on the deadliest species in the galaxy." The war was no longer about survival. It was about dominance. And humanity was just getting started. The Corthan homeworld was a fortress, the heart of an empire that had ruled unchallenged for centuries. No species had ever dared to strike at it. Until now. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war anymore. It was delivering a message. Earth's military command had devised a strategy so audacious, so completely insane, that no Corthan admiral would ever have expected it. Instead of slowly grinding their way through the Dominion's outer defenses, the humans were going to cut off the head of the beast. The plan was simple: hit the Corthan homeworld so hard, so violently, that their entire empire collapses in fear. Operation Executioner had begun. A small fleet of human stealth ships slipped past the Dominion's outer patrols. The Corthans had spent decades preparing for invasions, not assassinations. Their defenses were designed to fight massive armadas, not a few carefully placed human operatives. Among them was Captain Rourke, the man who had stolen the Vel Wrath, now leading a new mission, one even more suicidal. The plan? Get in, cause chaos, and get out. Rourke and his team infiltrated the outer space stations orbiting the Corthan homeworld, planting detonations along key defense grids. The humans had figured out something that no other species had before them. The Dominion's technology was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. Their power grids, their supply networks, all vulnerable. The detonations were synchronized. A single command was sent. Boom! In an instant, half of the Corthan planetary defenses went dark. And that's when the real attack began. The Corthans expected an invasion. They expected fleets, soldiers, ground battles. What they got instead was annihilation. The first human strike force didn't land. They bombed. Human warships, smaller and faster than Dominion battlecruisers, launched planet-cracking railgun rounds at key infrastructure sites. Military installations, gone. Supply hubs, turned to dust. The Korthan command structure was in chaos. Generals screamed orders that no one could follow. Warships scrambled to launch, only to be shot down before they left the atmosphere. The humans weren't fighting for territory. They were dismantling an empire. And the Korthans had no idea how to stop them. Deep in the palace of the Korthan Emperor, the once mighty ruler of the Dominion stared at the holofeeds in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives. They are weak." A nearby officer trembled as he spoke. "My lord, the humans have—" The door exploded. Smoke and fire filled the chamber as Rourke and his team stormed in. Human soldiers covered in blood and battle scars pointed their weapons at the most feared leader in the galaxy. Rourke stepped forward, his face unreadable. "You declared war on humanity," he said coldly. The Emperor, once so arrogant, so untouchable, now cowered before them. Rourke raised his pistol. Big mistake. One shot. The Korthan Emperor was dead. Across the Dominion, the news spread like wildfire. The Emperor was dead. Their homeworld was in ruins. Their fleets were broken. Without leadership, without fear keeping them in line, the Dominion's enslaved species finally rose up. Planets revolted. Korthan military officers were assassinated in their own command centers. Slave armies turned on their masters, slaughtering them without mercy. The Dominion was falling apart. And the humans? They didn't stop. Months later, on a ruined Dominion world, Admiral Kasari stood among the wreckage of what was once the greatest empire in the galaxy. A war that should have lasted centuries had been won in months. She looked at the gathered human soldiers, their faces worn but victorious. "They thought they were the apex predators," she said. She turned, looking at the burning remnants of the Dominion. They were wrong. For the first time in history, the galaxy had a new ruler. And the humans? They weren't conquerors. They were hunters. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear. Now humanity had taken their place. Some civilizations celebrated their arrival. Others trembled. Because the galaxy had learned a terrifying truth. You don't declare war on humanity. Because if you do, you don't get a war. You get extinction.